I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
Miami Dolphins fans, welcome to another episode of Phin-Addict Fury with your host, Larry K. Where the hell have I been? Well, I'll tell you what. The Dolphins depressed me so much, as Hootie said with the Blowfish, they make me cry, to the point that I just couldn't bring myself to talk much more Dolphins. But remember, if you decide to join the Fury fam as an official member, just click the join button right here. I did do a cross-examination of Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel's post-game press conference. I kind of gleaned what I could from them using my experience as an attorney. I did it with Shake Money, and there was also one where we went back to last year's postseason press conference and talked about it. We got more behind-the-scenes, members-only stuff coming. Shake's going to fire back up in the blender this offseason, and I'm going to be here with you to talk about free agency, things all about that, and discuss the Fin. So the offseason doesn't put a stop to our content here on Phin-Addict Fury, but it's always a little bit more sparse. There's a lot going on in the world, and I'm busy and all that, but I am here for you guys. I'm happy to see you back with me. Make sure you click that like button, and welcome to another episode. So let's talk about, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl, and then in general, what's going on with our Miami Dolphins. First and foremost, the Super Bowl. There was a meme that came out a while ago, and it said, the Super Bowl a lot of people want, like Buffalo versus Detroit, the Great Lakes Northern battle there. But we're somehow going to wind up getting the Cheifs versus the Eagles. And, that was back in early December, and of course, it's true, right? We get the Cheifs versus the Eagles, which most people did not want, to be honest with you. Chiefs going for a three-peat. A lot of controversy with the Chiefs and getting there with the officiating and those things. On the other side, the Eagles, at the end of the day, I wanted Detroit, just for the city of Detroit, for the fact that, Campbell, I think, brings a lot of energy and intangibles to that franchise. Just for the fact that, Detroit fans have been waiting forever, They had Barry Sanders, they had all these other things, and they never have gotten to the promised land. And this year, you spend the whole season with that stellar record. You secure the number one seed in the NFC. The road goes through Detroit. You went to the NFC Championship game last year, and it looks like it's all laid out for you. You have a showdown the end of the season against Minnesota. You beat Minnesota decisively to secure home field advantage and an NFC North division title. And then you lose to the Commanders. Now, obviously, Daniels is a very talented quarterback. They have a lot of playmakers. They were playing with a passion. Quinn is a very good coach. But it still just had to sting Detroit fans. And I was a little bit disappointed that Detroit didn't make it to the next round. And then, the Commanders do what they did, and now all of a sudden I'm pulling for the underdog Commanders, because that would be a heck of a Cinderella story. They haven't been to the Super Bowl in since I was a little child. And, with the name change and the ownership change, and I love the city of D.C., and I'm pulling for them to beat Philly, because let's face it, the Chiefs' whole thing, was kind of initiated a couple of years ago against Philly. Philly won the Super Bowl, obviously, against New England. They had been there against New England earlier, in the early 2000s and lost. And Philly's had their share now of successes as of recent. And I would have liked to see the Commanders win it. But I think we all knew, which was probably to me what was most disappointing about the Commanders, not getting, about Detroit not beating the Commanders, was I didn't think Washington was going to have what it took to go up to Philly and win that game. And sure enough, they couldn't. Now, Saquon Barkley, I'm a Jersey guy. I'm right down the road from the Meadowlands. Used to be Giant Stadium. Now it's MetLife. The Jets play there too. But it was the Giants, stadium for all intents and purposes. Sorry, Jet fans. And Saquon was actually the first commit to Rutgers in 2015, which is my alma mater. He wound up, obviously flipping to Penn State. The rest is history. He's a Pennsylvania kid. But he's a monster player. And I was disappointed that he didn't go for the record in the regular season, because now if Philly has an NFC championship, Saquon Barkley is an absolute legend, and he's been playing at an extremely high level. And had he gotten that regular season record on top of all the other postseason success, I think it would have just been a perfect bookend to the entire story of this season and to this young man's, already amazing career. He goes from the New York Giants, who drafted him high, which is really unheard of in this day and age with quarterbacks. See, I'm losing it. With running backs, because the game's changed so much that running backs aren't as much of a sought-after commodity as they used to be. You're just not running with the same workhorse anymore. But he goes high. The Giants make the decision to pay Daniel Jones, who's now going to be gone anyway, instead of trying to pay Saquon Barkley. He goes to Philly. Now, Philly has other pieces in place. They got Jalen Hurts. They've had successes. They've got a good defense. And now he, against another NFC East foe in Washington, he does his thing. And it's nice to see Saquon Barkley doing his thing. So that's a cool story. And I disagreed with Sirianni sitting Barkley to end the season because I wanted him to go for the record. But I guess maybe they have the last laugh because now they're going to the Super Bowl. So who knows what would have happened if they played him. I still think they should have let him play in the first half. It would have just been that much more of an epic story. But it is what it is. It's water under the bridge. He had a really good game. He's a force to be reckoned with. And so I'm happy for him, but I'm not a huge Eagles guy. On the other side of it, I think a lot of people didn't want to see the Chiefs try to go for this three-peat. They're tired of it. It's the same thing over and over again. And I think, there's a storied nature to dynasties that we look back on fondly once it's over with, as fans that we got to witness it. But while you're in the depths of dealing with a dynasty year in and year out, it really can get, boring. It's like, give somebody else a chance. Now, I understand KC wasn't great for many years, so it must be fun for their fans right now. Obviously, they got Isaiah Pacheco, a Rutgers cat, running the ball, toting the rock, and he still reps, Jersey and Rutgers, so I can't hate that much on it in some ways. But, to see them go for the three-peat again, it can be frustrating. Now, I know a lot of people out there in Dolphins world were saying, you can't be a true Dolphins fan. You can't truly, call yourself a loyal fan if you ever cheer for the Buffalo Bills, because the Buffalo Bills are a division rival, and how dare you cheer for a division rival. And here's the thing. I'm at a point with the Miami Dolphins where the Dolphins are so irrelevant to the overall landscape of football, especially postseason football. They had the one flashy season last year that didn't amount to anything. The Dolphins are so far from relevance to me that I'm not that passionately moved to feel the need to vehemently hate the Buffalo Bills in the AFC Championship game long after the Dolphins are not even in the conversation. Now, if you're talking about the Jets, where we have that, maybe I feel like now I know if you go back to the 90s, and this is years ago, I was alive too, I was a little kid. I know if you go all the way back to then, there's a lot of bad blood with the Buffalo Bills because Jim Kelly in those years preventing Marino really in a lot of ways from getting back to the Super Bowl and cementing his legacy. So I'm not sitting here saying I root for the Bills or I want Josh Allen to get a Super Bowl ring, because I don't as a Dolphins fan. If I had a choice between any of the other 16 teams aside from the Chiefs in the AFC, I wouldn't pick Buffalo. But going into that championship game, I'm tired of the Chiefs and I'm tired of them getting the friendly whistle, and I'm tired of the whole situation. And let me be clear, the first time the Chiefs went, I wanted them to win. I thought Mahomes was a blossoming talent. I thought they were fun to watch. I thought the fan base was deserving. They hadn't seen a lot of success in their lifetimes. Andy Reid is one of the best coaches in football and ever, probably. And he had gotten there with McNabb and the Philadelphia Eagles. And, he had great seasons with Philly over and over again. And, I wanted him to win. But by now, I'm just tired of it. I want something new to happen. I want a new fan base to experience it. And let's be clear. Part of the reason I want another fan base to experience the joy of winning is because I want to see live vicariously through them. I wish it was us. I wish it was the Miami Dolphins and our fans and our community. I wish it was us that was finally going to break through and feel that joy. But if it can't be us, at least I want it to be somebody else who hasn't felt that joy in forever. And so Buffalo, they've been through hell. All those Super Bowls, losing every single one of them in the 90s. Now they have this really good quarterback. They have a really good team. Every year they're in contention. Every year they're going down to the wire. And they can't get it done. And I'm like, if that was me, man, I'd love to be able to go to the Super Bowl. And we're so far out of the conversation as the Miami Dolphins. We're so far out of the conversation that I don't feel particularly intrigued by rooting against another team so much, because what the hell do I care? The Dolphins are so far from relevance, doesn't really matter. So I'll be honest, I wanted to see Buffalo beat KC. Now, if Buffalo had won, I don't know if I probably wouldn't have rooted for them in the Super Bowl. I'm not going to root for them to win the Super Bowl, but I wanted them to beat KC. I thought it would have been a more interesting game. And so Josh Allen, to keep the ball and go for a quarterback sneak with a first down on the line. And from my vantage point, and I think most people who are being honest with themselves, and I know these days a lot of people have trouble being honest with themselves. So, if you're a KC fan or you just hate the Bills, I'm sure you're going to find some rationale why I'm wrong. But I think we all know if you're being honest, and you don't have to be honest in public. I say this a lot. Go be honest, in the mirror by yourself. Josh Allen had, his shoulder, the ball's here and the line. If the mic is the line, the ball was over. And the line judge on the far side was clearly coming in with enough yardage to give him the first down. And the other ref never gave it a chance, and it wasn't even close, so it was suspect from jump. And then they moved the ball back. And he doesn't get the first down. And in my opinion, the way that drive was going and the way that game was going, that changed the entire trajectory of the game. And the Chiefs wind up winning that game. Now, is it rigged? Is it intentional that the NFL behind closed doors gets together and says, oh, we're going to give Mahomes the game. We're going to do one solid for the Chiefs. We're going to make sure they get to the three-peat. No. But is there a phenomenon in sports that has been well documented, including in the NBA referee documentary that came out a few years ago about the guy who was caught involved in the mob gambling and whatnot? Do refs call games different ways for different players? Do they give certain players deferential treatment? Do they throw a flag and give a star a benefit of the doubt against the defense, or not throw a flag against other guys who also get the benefit of the doubt if they want them to be able to put up the numbers, get the fans excited, etc.? You're damn right that happens. And I don't even think that's disputable. So while it's not intentionally rigged, in my opinion, there's certainly a friendly whistle for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think that that particular play, it's never something so blatantly egregious that you could just call it out right on its face. Even though these days I bet you could get away with that too, because people just don't want to be objective. But it's always something that you could maybe get past. You could maybe not be totally sure. And if you pay attention to the review on that play, the refs didn't say it was confirmed, so it wasn't indisputable evidence that they were right. What it was it stood, meaning they didn't have enough evidence to overturn it. And had they had the right angle on the other side to see where the ball was, or if guys weren't in the way to see where the ball was, they would have had more definitive evidence. So that was a shame, in my opinion. Still, Bills had plenty of chances to try to win it anyway. They didn't do it. You're left with this Super Bowl. Kansas City versus Philly. I think I'm rooting for Philly. I'm not thrilled with the whole thing, but it is what it is. You know, the NFL in a lot of ways, with the rules, with the officiating, with the commercialization, it's been getting on my nerves, quite frankly. But, you know, this is what we're left with. Halftime, Kendrick Lamar, I think that's a great choice. He was on top of the world with the They're Not Like Us song. You know, finally, you know, after Thanksgiving and this and that, it's not some kind of country-themed halftime show. And, hey, I got nothing against country music, but, I mean, everything is country now. Even the old rap songs are now country songs. You know, everybody get tipsy. That was a rap song. Now it's a country song. Okay, we got maybe it's something different to have Kendrick just go out there and do his thing. And I think that's pretty cool. So that should be cool. But let's talk a little bit about our team, who I said is kind of lost their relevance. Now, I told you what was going to happen with the Miami Dolphins, man. I told you that they're going to spin their narratives. They're going to do their thing. I was afraid that Chris Grier would be fired, but Mike McDaniel kept. And make no mistake, I'm not saying Chris Grier should stay. What I'm saying is I definitely didn't want to get into a situation where Ross is keeping one guy and firing the other, so that, you know, now when he's looking for a GM, the GM's got to work with Mike McDaniel. And then in 2 years, when the GM complains, well, Mike McDaniel wasn't my pick, and they fire Mike McDaniel, now they got to hire, you know, a coach that wants to work with that GM. I don't want to deal with that anymore. I think it's a terrible way to run an organization. So the one thing I was happy about that Ross did was, if he was going to keep any of them, he just kept all of them. And I like that, because they will sink and they will swim together. So if and when they get fired, they will go together and will rebuild this thing all brand new with a fresh start. And that is the best thing that, in my opinion, the Dolphins have going for them. Now, I know some of you don't want to hear that, because some of you want to buy into whatever nonsense they're trying to sell you this offseason to make you try to think they're going to be good, to keep you engaged, to keep you interested. But it's not, I'm telling you, it's not worth it to do all that. Because this team, their shot was 2 years ago. When they made the move for Chubb, and Jalen Phillips was healthy and on a tear before he got hurt against the Jets, and Javon Holland was playing, you know, high-end ball, and Tyreek Hill was 2 years younger, and teams didn't know how to figure out Tua, and Mike McDaniel's offense, they had that head start with the motions before it was outlawed. That was the time. Everything now is just the epilogue to the shot they had. In my opinion, that's gone now. Now, I hope I'm wrong, and I give this disclaimer every time I talk about the Dolphins. I hope I'm wrong. But I just don't see it with this regime. And the fact that Tua Tagovailoa had a concussion once again, he's now had one full season with the Dolphins while healthy. That's it. The fact that he was hurt again with the concussion, but then he was also hurt with a hip injury towards the end of the year and basically just sat out the last several weeks of the season. Not to mention, he struggled again against better teams in critical situations this year. The coach doesn't seem to have answers. The coach is sitting in the postseason presser talking about how he finds different guys. Guys show up late. There's no accountability. Of course there's no accountability, Mike. You're the head coach. You've been trying to be everybody's best friend. You've been trying to hope that guys are going to listen to you just because you're going to give them some wisdom and they choose to listen to you. You don't demand or command respect, so you don't get it. And your offensive innovations may be good for game plans or overall offensive scheme design, but they haven't worked from a play caller standpoint for a while now. You've managed to get everything you could out of Tua Tagovailoa, and you could get the most out of him when his salary was lower and other guys' salaries were lower, so that you could afford to set him up for success by putting other good players around him. And at this point now, you don't have the money to surround him with the adequate number of players to make him successful. Your scheme is played. You've juggled defensive coordinators too much. Chris Grier has juggled personnel too much. You scapegoated the defense too much last year to try to cover up for your own issues. And now you're left with a team that I just don't think is in a position under its current iteration to make any actual run or actual dent as far as being a contender. And to add insult to injury, I want you to pay attention, guys. This is big. This is big. I want you to pay attention to something. I want you to pay attention to the fact that when this team spins narratives, you should always be suspicious, because if you look back at the narratives that they spun, you can call them out because you have the evidence and you have the receipts in front of you. What do I mean? Remember when Vic Fangio left the Miami Dolphins? Remember when Vic Fangio left the Miami Dolphins and Javon Holland, who's not even going to be with the team next year because he had a subpar season and he wants to get paid and he's concerned about himself like most of the guys on this team are? Remember when he said Vic could kick rocks in not so many words? Remember that? Remember when we heard that Vic just didn't quite fit what the team wanted to do? You remember that? At the end of the day, Vic Fangio's defense is highly, highly ranked with Philadelphia. Highly ranked with Philadelphia. They are going to the Super Bowl. So the guy who just left us to go run the defense in Philly, he's now going to the Super Bowl, and he's doing well. And he said, well, if you look at the Dolphins last year, we were good in most defensive stats. We just lost the last bunch of games. And Philly has the resolve and the culture to take them to another Super Bowl, while Miami is sitting at home. And Tua Tagovailoa, I didn't see Tua with a clipboard and headphones on the sidelines with McDaniel, like you see a lot of quarterbacks when they're injured. They have the baseball hat on. They got the headphones on. They're giving the signals. They're participating. I saw Tua on the bench with shades on at night with a big fur coat on, trying to stay warm and trying to be fly. And Vic Fangio left this team, and guys are saying kick rocks, and he didn't start the right guys, and he didn't listen. And what they're really saying, and shouts to Lewis about this, the guy with the podcast now, and the famed contributor to so many content creators in Miami Dolphins work, because he was one of the first people to said this, and I co-signed it, and I've been saying it too. This culture does not demand accountability from its players. This culture wants to coddle players. This culture wants it to be okay to say, well, a loss is a loss. It's all good. I got my mansion. I got my model. I got my cash. I got the bag. I'm good. And I don't want anybody telling me what's what or being insensitive or being old school. The Miami Dolphins have made the decision that these hard-nosed, thick-skinned, chiseled chin, old school cats are not for them because they want soft and understanding instead of accountability. Now, Vic Fangio, when he had the chance to trash the culture of the Dolphins, now I know his friend basically said these guys weren't accountable, these guys didn't want to work. Yeah, but Vic didn't do that. When Vic had the chance, see, this is what I mean about Tua. Remember when Tua said Flores was just a not a good person? Flores was a bad. He kicked him under the bus over and over again. The Miami Dolphins kicked Fangio under the bus. The Miami Dolphins kicked Flores under the bus. Miami Dolphins kick everybody under the bus. Everybody under the bus. Whenever they leave, because they have a crappy way of going about things. Fangio had a chance to say these dudes didn't want to play. No, Fangio said, look, nothing really went wrong. I don't know what happened. We were pretty good, and then we had a skid at the end. It's water under the bridge. That's what Javon Holland should have done instead of kicking rocks on camera. That's what Tua Tagovailoa should have done instead of giving a whole diatribe about how he was treated unfairly. That's what Chris Grier should have done and said, I take accountability for not meeting expectations. Instead of trying to say, oh, we had injuries, we had that, we had this. That's the problem. And that's the issue with the Miami Dolphins. There's no accountability. There's no tough culture. It's just, who else can we blame? Who else didn't do enough? Who hasn't been nice? Who didn't treat us like kings? Who didn't defer to us? And so when you see a defensive coordinator who the Dolphins trashed on the way out last year, now in the Super Bowl with a highly ranked, very effective defense, you got to think twice, or at least a little bit, about what's wrong internally with the Miami Dolphins. And at this point, I'm telling you, I don't believe this team gets it done. And that's why I'm not so invested in hating the Bills or caring about this or caring about that. Because until the Dolphins give me something to care about, it's kind of hard to get enthusiastic. Now, we've got some free agents, and I want to kind of go over some of them. But before that, I want to talk about Tyreek Hill, who, by the way, look, dude was a really good player. But he's, at some point, going to start declining because you just can't play at that high level the older you get. That's just the law of nature. That's the law of biology. That's life. We all know it, those of us who are past 30 and well into our 30s. We all know that. We all know that. So you just gave this guy a huge bag and you're relying on him to be a pillar, but he's getting up there. And he hasn't really shined bright when the lights came on either. Just like Tua hasn't, Tyreek hasn't. Not to mention all the off-the-field nonsense that's gone on with him and all the crazy nonsense he says. Because, again, there's no accountability in this franchise. Comes out that Tyreek says, he wants the Dolphins to field a more competitive team. Well, Tyreek, you and your crew there, Tua and all the other guys included, who wanted the bag and said things like the market is the market, maybe you're going to have to figure out how to spread the wealth a little bit if you want more talent around you in order to win. And maybe you should step up to the plate when the lights are on and make some plays on your own that you haven't made since you've been with Miami in the biggest games. You're not immune from criticism. Now, we got some free agents. I think Isaiah Wynn, I think he'll probably come back and compete for a starting position on the line. I think he'll be back. Agba, he's getting up there in age, but he stepped in a big way this year when we needed him, and I thought he was relatively effective. I think you'll have him back. I think Jones, you might have a chance of bringing back. He's a serviceable backup lineman, but you can't roll into the season with him as the starter. You lost too many good guys last year. I don't think we're going to keep him. Calais Campbell was an awesome player for us. Calais Campbell is the kind of guy that the Dolphins need all over the field, and they really only have in Calais Campbell and one or two other guys. I wouldn't be surprised if Calais Campbell decided to test the waters and go elsewhere. Unless he loves the no state income tax in Miami, and unless he just really wants to be in Miami because he likes the weather or whatever else to end his career. If he wants to try to win a ring, I think you're going to see him go. Huntley, I thought Huntley was serviceable. Especially towards the end of the season. Won a game or two he needed to win, but also lost games. I don't think it matters. I know there's a lot of the Tuaneers have gone from this guy's a franchise-changing generational quarterback to just give him time to develop to you better have the best backup ever because Tua's going to play half the season, and now we got to figure out every year who the best backup is. Look, teams don't win with their backup quarterbacks as a general rule unless they have a guy plug in for 2 to 3 games, maybe 4 max in a season, and unless the guy is a diamond, in the rough that you just haven't discovered and you step in shit and you get lucky. You don't. It doesn't really happen that way. Your starters got to stay healthy. So whether Huntley stays or not, whatever. Kendall Lamb, up in the air. I thought he was serviceable. You got guys like Duke Riley, who's been a mainstay, a lower depth guy, a special teams guy. Who knows if some of these guys' shelf lives are getting older or if they're sticking around. And then you got Javon Holland, who I expect to be gone. He's going to want a lot of money. Didn't have a great season. I don't think there's any reason, that he comes back, to be quite honest with you. Jordan Poyer, I thought, was one of the worst signings we'd had. And it's just another reason why I'm questioning Chris Grier. I mean, I don't know why we had all that scapegoating of the defense last year, other than the fact that the offense once again stumbled down the stretch. The coach, the quarterback, everything. Fangio was leaving because he wanted to get closer to Pennsylvania, and he probably saw the writing on the wall that this team didn't have what it took, and so Fangio was out. And so the Dolphins, instead of owning it, like I say, they wanted to spin narratives to you and BS to you. And that's what they did. And so they had to scapegoat the defense and shuffle all rearrange the chairs on the deck of a sinking ship and do all this nonsense to try to show that, look, we fixed the defense. To give all the people out there, the Tuaneers and everybody else, yeah, see, it was the defense. Look, we fixed the defense. Now we'll be great. And it didn't do anything. And so guys like Holland, guys like Poyer, I expect them to leave. Meanwhile, our former defensive coordinator is headed to the Super Bowl. That's life as a Miami Dolphins fan. So sorry for the diatribe, but this is what's been on my mind this offseason, guys, because once again we sat out the whole offseason. Now, Super Bowl should be interesting. I guess. I mean, I guess not, too. But once the Super Bowl's over, too, Shake's going to take some time off, and then Shake's going to be back within the blender. I'm going to have content for you guys. Remember, you can join Fury Fam and get access to a behind-the-scenes column, get access to behind-the-scenes videos, including the cross-examination. We will be doing more cross-examinations and having more discussions, Shake and I. Get access to that. And if you haven't done so yet, and you've watched this whole video, and you've enjoyed the content, or even if you love to hate the content, hit that subscribe button and support the channel, please. You can become a full member, but even if you're not going to become a full member, hit that subscribe button and support the channel. In that way, it's much appreciated. Share the channel with your friends. Phin-Addict Fury is still furious and will remain as such until the Dolphins make some progress and finally become contenders. I have some sort of faith somewhere out there that one day our Miami Dolphins will be actual contenders again, and we will have fun, and that day will feel so good. But until then, Larry K is here to give you the lowdown, the real, and the objective look at our team, and to apply criticism when it's needed. And right now it's needed. We will get through another season. We will see what happens. And I'm looking forward to the future, which I think is going to be a whole new regime. But I hope I'm wrong. Hope they turn it around this year. I will have much more content for you guys as the offseason goes on. We will talk draft. We will talk signings. We will talk news. So keep it locked right here to the Phin-Addict Fury channel. And make sure you keep a lookout for new content coming out from all our creators. I hope everybody's staying warm if you're anywhere where it's cold. If you're in Florida, keep enjoying the sunshine. South Florida, anyway. Keep enjoying the sunshine. As the world turns and the year goes by, Larry K will be back with you soon. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your Super Bowl parties, everybody. I'm out.